So let's get started. We're going to start with a banana pose. So we're going to target the torso like 4 planes. So 2 sides, a front and a back, and we will try and stretch the fascia, the connective tissue on each of these planes. And this will open up, actually create space, and that's what allows that energy to flow more freely, because most of us have a lot of tension in the body, okay? So we'll come on to our back. We take the hips over to the right edge of the mat. That just makes more space for your body. We take the left leg to the left, cross the right ankle over. And then here's the tricky part. I don't think it's that tricky, but we want to reach up, grab the right wrist, and then you probably need to wiggle yourself over. I don't know if you can see me, but I'm sort of using my head and shoulders to wiggle over. And you know you're deep enough when you feel the stretch in this region in here. Okay, so the waist, the ribs, that's where we're trying to get into. And then once you're there, we're here for 5 minutes, because I think most of you have heard me say time is important. I think one misconception that shows up in yoga is that the postures are somehow magical. And I don't mean that people actually think they're magic, but they just think yoga is all about these shapes. It's all about these postures. And once I'm in the posture, I'm getting some kind of great benefit. They don't necessarily consider how long are you in the posture? How many repetitions of that posture are you doing? How are you breathing when you're in the posture? What are you focused on when you're in the posture? These are all things that, as a yoga teacher, as a professional yoga teacher, this is what I do for my living, okay? As someone who's studied this stuff for a long time, these are really important factors. So I'll try and give you a concrete example of why this might be important, okay? So as I said at the beginning, modern science and medicine, this is changing slowly, but traditionally, if you want to say that, modern science and medicine haven't been around that long, right? Yoga, Taoism, these are thousands of years old. We can't say the same about the scientific method. We can't say the same about modern medicine, drugs, and surgery. These are new ideas. I just want everyone to take a moment to grasp that. Humans have been around for 4 million years. Yoga is said to be thousands of years old, which is not that long. And then modern science and medicine, how long has it been around? A few hundred years? So just keep things in perspective. Humans have been around, they've been healing themselves, they've been living their lives for millions of years. And we come up with something new called science and medicine, and we think we have everything figured out. We go to our doctor and they tell us something, and we don't question the truth of what our doctor said. Now, I'm not telling you to argue with your doctor. Again, I mean, the doctor knows a lot. They're an expert, but doctor's human. Yoga teacher's human, right? Everyone's human. You don't go to your dog for a checkup, right? You don't go to your dog for yoga lessons. So whatever expert you're dealing with, whoever they are, meditation teacher, guru, yoga teacher, doctor, surgeon, they're human. And humans have different perspectives. Humans make mistakes, right? And this is the whole idea behind, in medicine, a second opinion, right? I think a lot of people don't ever look for a second opinion. Doctor says something and that's it, done. But it may not be a bad idea to get an opinion of another doctor. It also may not be a bad idea to maybe get the opinion of someone outside of the medical establishment. You know, yes, healing happens outside of the medical establishment. Massage therapists, chiropractors, yoga therapists, even energy healers, you acupuncturists, Chinese medicine doctors. It might be interesting to approach a problem from a different angle. That, it's said when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So someone who's a surgeon and is used to healing people surgically, they may have a hard time being open-minded enough and being knowledgeable enough, to be quite honest with you. Surgeons are busy. So they're not going to research the latest energy healing. That's not their job unless they have a natural inclination or interest. So they're not going to be able to recommend or refer you to a yoga therapist. They probably have no idea about that. Okay? All right, let's switch sides. You might pause for a moment, see if you can feel the change or the difference. And again, when I say chi or prana, people can get really in their heads and think about some magical, mystical thing that they'll never experience. Feel both sides. If you feel a difference in the quality, that is chi or prana. That is what these ancients were talking about. You can sense there is an energetic shift or change. Now, your mind might tell you, Doug, I just stretched, so I feel the stretch. Yes, that's chi or prana. And again, in our modern times, we discount that. We think, oh, well, a little bit of buzzing or feeling, that's nothing. I didn't do anything to heal myself. I didn't do anything to reverse my aging. I didn't do anything significant. Yes, you did. And that's what the modern medicine and science is beginning to show us. As scientists and doctors begin to open up their mind and begin to study this stuff, they're finding out, oh, wait, there is something to it. All right, let's move our hips over to the left side. And then again, right leg to the right, left over right. We reach up, we grab the left wrist, right? And then again, you may need to sort of wiggle yourself over. When do you stop? When you feel the stretch here. And again, most of you know, because most everybody here is a regular to my classes, you need to feel for yourself that what you're doing is safe. There's very little risk of injury in this particular shape, which is why I haven't really talked much about it. There are certain shapes that for certain body types are higher risk, but this isn't one of those. This is a relatively low risk of injury posture. However, we're all different, and you might have been out gardening this week and done something unique to your body in terms of injury, and this could exacerbate that. My yin teacher Paul, he put it this way, and I really appreciate the way he puts so many things, because I think he has a talent for making things very poignant and simple, simple to understand. And I don't know if he came up with this or he learned it from his teacher or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. This is just wisdom. This is just something easy to remember that is true. And he said, every posture is bad for somebody. And again, as a yoga teacher, someone with a kind of inside view of the yoga industry and how yoga teachers think and what they post on message boards and forums and things like that, there sometimes can be this misconception in yoga teachers where they're like, that's not a safe posture, or that's a safe posture, right? This sort of idea that we can black and white, don't do this, that's dangerous, do this, it's safe. Well, when my teacher says every posture is bad for somebody, that should, sort of set off alarm bells for us. That just because we're doing something that's safe for the majority of people, easy for the majority of people, we still want to telegraph and let people know, like, hey, if you're struggling with this, if you're in a lot of pain, if you think you're hurting yourself, you might be. It doesn't matter if it's Shavasana. It doesn't matter if it's child pose. It doesn't matter if it's Tadasana. These are all three postures that many yoga teachers and students would think, oh, well, how could you hurt yourself doing that? You can, because somebody out there has a unique injury that trying to do that posture actually will inflame and exacerbate the injury they have, make it worse. So another thing that Paul says is, as yoga teachers and yoga practitioners, we want to adapt the Hippocratic Oath, right? Which is one of the things of the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. And he knows from experience because he's harmed his own body pushing himself with yoga. And this is a classic case of ego in spirituality. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, well, spirituality is about getting rid of your ego, so there's no ego in spirituality. Forget about it. There's tons of ego in spirituality. Maybe when you're at the end of the road, or you've completely, you're completely enlightened, you're completely embodied, you've done, all the work. There's no ego structure left. Great. But that's not where most people involved in spirituality are. Okay? Most people are on the path. They may be working through their, egoic blocks, but they're not there yet. And this includes teachers. Okay? This includes people who are healers. This includes people who can do a lot of good for you. I'm not saying avoid them because they have ego. But what I am saying is ego can play a role here. So my teacher, Paul, he had the impression, people told him, right, when he was learning yoga that, oh, if you can't do this pose, you must be spiritually blocked. Oh, if you can't do this series of postures, then there must be something wrong with you. You need to just practice harder. You need to push through. So he tried doing that, and he created permanent damage in his body because he thought that's what he needed to do to progress spiritually. Okay. So I'm not saying he's a bad person, but that is ego. I need to push through this to get the next thing. I'm just going to hammer through, just, bare knuckle it. No, that's not a good idea. Okay, let's unwind. Let's just relax, feel the rebound, and hopefully if you check both sides, yes, we just stretched the left, but for me, I don't feel nearly the contrast that I did on the first side. And that's because I already stretched my right side, right? It's already been enlivened by the posture. So it's a lot closer as the sort of immediate, acute sensations of stretch on the left side dissipate. The two sides feel pretty even. And that's exactly what we want. All right, let's bring legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. Shake it off a little bit. And again, as most of you know, there's no one particular way to do this. Just sort of feel the imbalances, feel what movements your body is craving here. Now, as usual, we're going to use the hinge to come up to seated because that helps to stabilize hips and spine. Okay, so hands under the hips, palms down, legs up, lift the head and neck, and just lower and pop yourself up to seated. That is an important step. It's not one that you want to skip all the time because, again, it does stabilize. And it's a little tiny bit of core strengthening, which hopefully you all know I think is super important. Yin isn't enough on its own to really bring us the health, vitality, happiness that we want. We want some balance there, okay? All right, butterfly, soles of feet together. Notice my feet are out here. Okay, I think you all know this because you all come really regularly, but I can't see you at home. And when I teach this in person, I always see a student doing this. Okay, that's called Baddha Konasana. That's a good groin stretch. Guess what? It's not going to target the muscles that we want today. So feet out, relax the legs, the arm, the head, let gravity take over. Okay, you can support your knees with 2 blocks. You can sit on a block. You can support your forearms, your forehead with a block or bolster. But the back is rounded. The feet are out. And you can play around with how far out they go. But generally speaking, the further the feet out, the further out they are, the more influence it has back here, which is where we want the influence. Right? This is torso flow. It's not groin stretch flow. It's not hip flow. It's not leg flow. It's here. Okay, so we're targeting basically from the waist up today. Will there be some influence on the hips and legs? Yes, of course. We can't separate the upper and lower parts of the body completely. We can't separate muscle from joint, from bone, from nerve. So everything gets affected to a degree, but it's just a shift in emphasis. It's a shift in our focus that can be significant or important. So we don't want to overlook that, okay? All right, so we'll hit the back again. First thing I want to mention is you may just want to repeat this, okay? You can change the position of your feet, maybe pushing them out a little further will again influence the back a little more. The reason I mention this is if you are somebody who once your legs are straight, you're doing this because there's so much tension in the hamstrings, then you can repeat this. You could also put something under your knees. Basically what we want is just gravity pulling us forward. Can you see how I'm completely relaxed? I could be asleep. All right, so for some people, when they do this, this is where they go. They don't go forward, they go back and they have to hold themselves up. That's not what we want. We also don't want to, force and pull ourselves with a strap. I see that as well. Not a good idea because you can injure your back. So whatever I need to do, sit on something, bend the knees, repeat this posture. Gravity is pulling me forward. Gravity, very gentle force of gravity, not pulling, not yanking, any of that. Arms are relaxed, head is relaxed, back is relaxed. Okay, this is the caterpillar pose. All right, please take your time. We'll unwind. Again, this is a rebound, as you all know, and it is an important part of the practice. It's not just a throwaway. So again, I've been describing my experience just to kind of give you an idea of what a rebound's all about. So as I came back, I could feel my spine, my back. Didn't feel good. It felt very kind of vulnerable, you know, like a feeling of getting old, like achiness in your bones. So I think, as you've all heard me say in the past, that's not a bad thing. In a sense, when we create short-term discomfort, if we do it skillfully and intelligently, it avoids long-term pain and suffering. So the way I see that, what I'm feeling as I come out, and the feelings are gone already, you know, they just dissipate, but is that feeling was telling me that part of my spine was weak, maybe even injured or damaged. And the posture stimulated it. Again, going back to energy, I said I wouldn't talk much about it today, but it just, for whatever reason, that's the direction we're going in. That stimulation of the posture caused the life force, the chi, the prana, the blood, you know, again, if you want to think of it more Western terms, to go to that area and to rebalance, to heal, to nourish those tissues. Now, yes, when we come out of the posture, there's some discomfort or pain there, but you could almost think of that discomfort or pain as the signal that is telling your body, go and repair this, right? If there were no pain or discomfort, or just laying in bed all day, my body will waste away. It will not get healthier. Yes, we do need some rest, but you can overdo rest. That's what's important, okay? So let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. You can overdo anything, folks. So, you know, this idea of I'm injured, I'm hurt, I need to rest, yes, to a point. And then the rest is actually going to impede your recovery, your full recovery. How long you need to rest depends on the injury. It depends on the particulars of your situation. All right, let's go ahead and hinge up. And we will do half dragonfly. So same idea applies here, folks. If that last one, you were somebody who had trouble, you know, folding forward with the legs straight, you're probably going to have even more trouble with this. So same principles, sit on something, bend your knees, okay? Try and get it so you feel like if you fell asleep, gravity is pulling you forward, not hands behind me holding me up, right? Where if I fell asleep, I would go back onto my back. All right, turn toward your left foot, make sure you know your left and your right, and then we'll reach down and just hold the foot. Now, I get some of you will not be able to do that, in which case take a tie, a belt, a yoga strap, a towel, throw it over your foot and just hold both ends with your hands. You're not pulling, again, this isn't this, but just hold yourself in place. Relax, see my arms are relaxed. I'm just holding myself over the leg. Now, the area we want to feel it today is here. You may feel it here as well. Very, very common, okay? But the area we're trying to target is right in here, okay? So in the waist and the ribs. So you're folding over. If you don't feel that, you roll or stack right shoulder over left. Okay, now this is challenging for many, many people, myself included. So you might look at me and think that, you know, I'm comfortable or this is easy for me. I experience a lot of sensation when I'm doing this shape, okay? It is quite challenging, all right? So we're here, we're again stretching those obliques, intercostals, those are the muscles that are there. And the muscles are in our torso, according to Tom Myers, and Tom Myers does dissections, so he actually gets to see cadavers and fresh tissue dissections. He actually gets to see people's bodies and the effects on the tissues directly of certain lifestyles, certain ways of living your life and being. So what he says is that modern people like us very often have thick felt-like fascia in our torsos from lack of movement. Again, there are several different kinds of movement. This is a kind of movement, as strange as that sounds, even though we're holding a position. The positions we're holding are putting our tissues under what's called hermetic stress, and I think you've all heard me use that term before. So hermetic stress is good stress. The stretching you're feeling here is hermetic stress. Hermetic stress is desirable, and especially if you're trying to heal, and especially if you're trying to stay young, you want to find as much hermetic stress that you can bring into your life in regular intervals. So examples of hermetic stress, again, stretching, getting to the point where it's a little bit uncomfortable and, being there, breathing there, not trying to push yourself to some kind of arbitrary limit. Again, that's what my teacher did, and that's how he injured himself. He was measuring his body against other bodies that could do incredible things and thinking that, okay, I can't do those things. There must be something wrong or blocked in me, which is incorrect. His physical body was just not designed to do those things. As spiritual as we get, as much as we can work through mental, emotional, psychological, energetic blocks in our lifetime, our bodies are only going to change so much. It's part of having a lifetime as a certain individual, is the body is going to be only so malleable for whatever reason. It's only so malleable. Not everyone can be a professional dancer. Not everyone can work in Cirque du Soleil. Not everyone can be a world-class Olympic weightlifter. Not everyone can be a quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry. I know that it's very popular, new age idea. You can do anything you want to do. That's simply not true, folks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Our physical bodies, when it comes to physical tasks, have limitations. Now, what's important is we can all be healthy. We can all be happy. No one has to be a world-class Olympic lifter to be happy, especially someone who doesn't have that build. I just don't believe it. I'm sorry. If you have an obsession with being a world-class Olympic lifter and that's your only source of happiness, I'm going to say you have probably other deeper psychological issues that need to be addressed. That's where that desire is coming from. Much like a addict's desire to drink or do drugs or abuse themselves in other ways isn't coming from a love of alcohol, right? An alcoholic isn't like, well, I just love beer. I'm a beer aficionado. No, that's not where that's coming from. It's called alcohol abuse. It's not safe, enjoyable use. It's abuse. Let's switch sides. All right, side 2. So again, targeting in here. So someone who has a, obsession with a certain career, I need to be a rock star, I need to be an Olympic lifter, I have to be a ballerina, especially someone who doesn't have a build for it, who shows no innate talent or skill for those things. And that's exactly what would happen if you didn't have the build. If you were trying to be a ballerina and you didn't have the build, you wouldn't be able to do the turnout, right? What the ballerinas do where their feet are pointing, away from one another perfectly. You would still have an angle with your feet. That's because of your hip joints. Now, if you have some superficial tension in the hip joint, meaning muscular or fascial tension, you can, with practice, stretch that out, work that out, and you can change your turnout. So I'm not saying everyone who the first time they try and do the turnout can't do it. That means that that's it for them. No, some people will just need to keep practicing, and over time they will stretch their hips out and they'll be able to do the turnout. But that means they have the bones for it. That means they have an innate capacity to do that, and not everybody does. Okay? And I want to make this statement very clear because, again, people just misunderstand me, mishear me all the time. They think I'm saying one thing and I'm not saying that thing. It doesn't matter for health and happiness. Someone who can do the turnout is a better ballerina. They're not a better person. They're not more spiritual. They aren't inherently better than you or I who can't maybe do the turnout. Okay? Same with lifting weights. Same with being a quarterback in the NFL. Same with everything. Okay? We human beings are so funny because we compare ourselves to others and then we feel deficient. We feel not good enough. We feel like others are better than us. We each have our own unique journey that we are to make in this lifetime, and we've been given what we've been given to make that journey, to have that experience. And it's a very rich experience if we allow ourselves to have it. But if I'm looking always over my shoulder at someone else's experience, and I say, well, they can do the turnout and they're a professional ballerina, I need to be like them. Now, the experience I'm having, which is the one I was meant to have, how do I know? Because here I am, right? I can't do the turnout. My body isn't designed to be a professional ballerina. Right? It's the message is right there. And again, I'm not saying we can't persevere beyond insurmountable odds. I'm not saying miracles don't happen, amazing things don't happen. But those are more the purvey of faith. Okay, hard work, sure, but faith. And that's a little bit more than I want to speak about today. But again, doggedly, mechanically, physically jamming my body into positions it's not meant to go into, thinking that that's going to turn me into a professional ballerina or make me a more spiritual person or whatever it is, make me have the experience that someone else is having that I want, that I think is going to make me happy. This is not a good idea. And I mention it because you do see it happen in yoga. Again, my teacher, and again, Paul is an extremely brilliant man. He's one of the smartest people I think I've ever met, Paul Grilly, my yin teacher. So the fact that he could make that mistake and injure himself, again, I think is a cautionary message to all of us. This isn't a thing of, oh, stupid people are hurting themselves doing yoga. No, this is a matter of extremely smart, brilliant people are hurting themselves doing yoga. And then they are humble enough and open enough and honest enough to come back and warn us not to make the same mistake that they made. Okay? All right. So let's unwind from that one. We have one more set to go. Now, I should have mentioned this right at the beginning, so you can go ahead and rebound, but you're going to need 2 blocks or something block-like for today's class, because we are doing 2 postures here at the end that pretty much are not possible without the blocks. They're 2 important postures. So if you're at home or you're watching this today and you don't have blocks, please put it on your to-do list. They're cheap You can get them everywhere: Walmart, Target, Amazon. You know, yoga blocks, not a huge investment. So if you want the most out of your yoga practice, it's worth the investment, okay? We don't use a lot of props in this class, but we're going to today, and we're going to for very beneficial therapeutic reasons. So we don't want to just skip these postures, okay? So go ahead and do your counter stretch, and then grab your blocks if you don't have them already. So this is what I have, cork blocks, but you know, they come in all kinds of materials. I just like natural materials in general. It's easier on the environment. It's usually nicer, prettier, just all around better, but might be a little more expensive. I'll say this though, you know, these are gonna last you the rest of your life if you take care of them. So it's not like, you know, this is something I'm going to have to buy every couple of years. So you know, you make one time investment, you won't have to do it again. Okay. All right. So 2 blocks. One is like a pillow for your head. The other is intended to rest between your shoulder blades. We're trying to target this muscle here. This is the pectoralis. Okay. And this is the culprit in a lot of bad posture, which looks like that. Shoulders roll forward, head forward, the shoulders. What we like is to train the body to have the shoulders rolled back, right? And you can see my head goes back immediately. So this is a much better posture. It also affects our mood, by the way, folks. Okay, so if I look at someone like that, they look a lot more low energy, right? Maybe even depressed. If I see someone like that, I'm not going to think, oh, there's someone who's depressed, someone with low energy. And again, science, now that we're beginning to be interested and study this stuff, the science tells us, yes, posture affects mood. It affects perception. It affects outlook. It matters. All right, so let's make our way into this is called a supported fish. You're probably gonna have to play around with the blocks a little bit, okay? That's just par for the course. Notice my arms, they're not down here because I don't get a stretch down there. You probably won't either. So up here, maybe higher. You can do whatever you want with the legs. This feels nice for me today. Knees bent, but your legs can be straight. You can do the, you know, butterfly if you enjoy that kind of thing. The main thing is the stretch in the front of the chest, the pectoralis. Now, the reason this is so therapeutic and valuable for us is I showed you earlier, the shoulders roll forward for most people. That's because most of us spend hours and hours seated, probably at a computer or on a device of some kind. When we're not there, we're probably in our car. Same thing, slumped forward, shoulders rolled forward, holding the steering wheel. And the human body was just not designed for that. It's not good for it. It's not designed for it. You know, if you did it for a few minutes every day, fine. But most of us do it for hours and hours. I've lately been really trying to limit my time in front of the computer, spend a lot more time outdoors. It's a struggle, I'll tell you. I think I have a much more flexible schedule than many people. I also teach movement for a living, and yet it is still a struggle. It is a struggle for modern people. So here's the thing is, if we want health and happiness, it's really not negotiable, in my opinion. And again, there's, you know, mounting scientific evidence that this isn't just my opinion. My opinion is informed very often, again, by wisdom traditions and modern science. So I don't just tend to pull something out of a hat and form an opinion for no reason, you know, because I like it or I agree with it. No, I'm interested in what do these ancient traditions tell us? And then usually my opinion is formed by the intersection of the ancient traditions and then the modern science that backs it up. Says, yeah, that's right. So the more time we can spend outdoors, the more time we can spend moving, using our body. Generally, this is going to impact our overall sense of well-being, our overall sense of health. And I'll add this, it really doesn't matter how much you like the outdoors or you like moving. That's the funny thing about it. For our ancestors, it was pretty much, again, non-negotiable. Survival meant procuring enough food and calories on a regular basis, which meant hunting and gathering, which was a lot of movement most of the time. Additionally, our ancestors, and again, when I say ancestors, I'm not talking about farmers. Farmers, yes, there are recent descendants. We're descendants of, agricultural. Most of us, if we go back in our family tree, we're not going to find royalty, or we're going to find farmers. We're going to find people who, tilled the land. Vast majority of humanity, okay? So yes, that was recent history, but again, humans around for 4 million years. Agriculture, 10,000. So again, I said, yoga is said to be, I think, 5,000 years old. Christianity has been around for 2,000 years. We hear those numbers, we think, oh, wow, it's so long, 5,000 years. Well, we've been cultivating the land for 10,000 years. Right? It's a lot longer. But we domesticated the wolf, what we commonly call the dog. Dogs are still essentially just wolves. They're just domesticated wolves. We domesticated the wolf 50,000 years ago. Okay, so we've been tilling the land for 10,000, but we've been hunting with wolves and, having wolves part of our pack for 50,000 years, more than double, right? So when you see your dog, your pet, you're like, that's a relationship that goes back longer than people have been farmers. And then 50,000 years sounds like a long time until you think of 4 million years, right? This is when our brains just kind of shut off, right? 4 million years, we don't really have a way of picturing it even. So most of us it's just like does not compute. All right, let's unwind from this. We have one more posture. For this one, you'll want one block, but remove both blocks first. So you want to come flat on your back. I see people do this one incorrectly all the time. Just last night, I saw somebody, she put the block behind her and then tried laying back on it. Don't do that. Do not do that. Lay on your back, lift your hips, and then place the block. Okay, and there are different heights at which you can place the block. The stretch is here, the front of the abdomen, okay? So we extend the legs out, we extend the arms up, and we try and create a stretch in what's called the rectus abdominis, all right? So the reason I bring that up is I think it's important because, again, I think all of you know my angle is to educate. Because with proper education, that leads to motivation. If we want to be happy, we want to be healthy, and I have the wrong ideas about what that means, then even though I want to be happy and healthy, I will not be able to do that. Okay? If I think health and happiness comes from eating or drinking energy drinks, eating protein bars, going to the gym, and bulking up, those types of things, making tons of money because, I need a huge, big bankroll and tons of insurance and a huge retirement. If I think these things because this is what my culture is telling me and I do those things, I might find myself, and I'm not criticizing any of that. If you're doing those things and you are happy and healthy, then don't listen to me by all means. Ignore me. Anyone who's figured out health and happiness and they're able to sustain that. I put a talk up, I think, this week, and there's going to be more talks on this subject, what I call a baseline, having a high baseline, a high emotional tone. And I think that's something that many people don't know is even possible for us as a human being. We sort of bump along the bottom, maybe just above like depression or anxiety. And then occasionally something good happens. We get a raise. We get we fall in love. We get married. So we get a little bump up temporarily. And then boom, we come right back to that just above depressed. And some people, it's not even just above depressed, it's depressed. And then they're taking all kinds of medications to try and just bump them up so they feel normal, so they can function. Again, humans have been around 4 million years. They didn't have antidepressants. They didn't have all these modern miracle drugs to rebalance the chemistry in our brain. So, if we were so depressed and so we had lacked energy and we had all these problems, we, as a species, we probably would have died out a long time ago. So we want to start to ask the question, okay, my doctor says I have a chemical imbalance. Why do I have this chemical imbalance? Why? A lot of us are going to think, well, it's genetic or my parents had it. Yes, your parents might have had problems too because they also lived in a very unnatural way. Most modern people do. So, there will be some people, their genetics, their constitution is just so robust. They can drink Gatorade, they can drink alcohol, they can eat whatever they want, they can not exercise, they can stare at a screen all day, and then they come out the other end and they're perfectly happy and relatively healthy. Okay, great. The question we want to ask is that me? And I'm telling you this because it wasn't me. When I was in my 20s, 30s, I was relatively healthy. I didn't have a lot of health problems, but emotionally, I was not happy. I was not happy. I was in a very dark place. And you may not have known that looking at me. I've known Matt all through that time. He might not be like, oh yeah, Doug, he was like a, real dark cloud. He was depressed all the time. But I was. It was a struggle to keep a high baseline, to keep my head above the emotional dark waters. And what's interesting is I may not have known that then. I probably just said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm not depressed. I'm normal. It's when later in life I was introduced through spirituality and through taking care of my health to a much higher emotional tone that I can look back and be like, wow, those were dark times. I was having my head just above water a lot of the time. And things would pull me down into the darkness, right? Bad things happen to everybody. It's unavoidable. But now when bad things happen to me, it doesn't suck me down into this black hole. I'm resilient. I'm what's called emotionally resilient. All right, let's lift those hips. It's not to say I won't, have a moment or two of depression or feel sad or feel sorry for myself for a minute. But it's a minute. It's not a dark hole that I get lost in for, long periods of time. Now, I do want to mention for anyone who's more spiritually inclined, the exception to this is what's called the dark night of the soul. And now I don't want to talk about that today, but that is something I do experience, but it's not a bad thing or a problem like the depression or the anxiety I experienced in the past was. All right, let's bring our legs in. Again, we'll shake it off, a little bit of movement here. And then unwind, and I recommend a few minutes of stillness. I'm going to be completely honest with you today. The stillness is much more vital and important after the flow class than it is yin. So if you need to run, after yin class, it's not the end of the world. Even with the flow class, it's not the end of the world. You just don't want to get in that habit, okay? With the yin, it's much less important, but I still recommend set a timer, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, relax on your back, and just give your body a moment to rest and restore.